Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Vanucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week. The you is what's important.
I like the video because I like to see who I'm talking to.
I like to see who I'm talking to, but it's not. I don't have a light on because it's connected to my bigger monitor. So
I got you. Yeah.
You're okay.
Oh no, not for trust us. We're
okay.
Definitely we're faces for radio.
Yeah.
No.
You are an improvement to the other two.
Oh yeah, you totally knock it up a whole different level. Like no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Level up there.
I like it just like I said, just because I enjoy talking. I like to see react because a lot of times I don't trust Phil, right? So I see if he's bullshitting or not if I can see him, right?
You know,
he picked on me this morning, so I get to pick on him now.
Yeah. Well, you got to take what you can get, right?
Exactly. Get the window. You just go.
But you forget that I'm the one editing the podcast.
Yeah,
right?
I know. It's whatever. I don't know how to
Next
do
thing you know, it's just me and Sonia. And where'd Kenny go? I don't know.
Whatever.
I couldn't make it.
We lost him. He's just
it's all fine. Wouldn't be the first time. Wouldn't be the first.
Oh man, it is nice to meet you.
I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. Thanks for juggling schedules and finding a time that works for all of us.
Yeah.
Well, I think I canceled one of them too. Like I think we all took
I think we all part in it. So yeah.
And having to move this thing around.
Yeah.
Because I met you at the lunch thing, right? We did the
BC Food and Beverage Conference.
Yeah, what was that government thing, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, it was a lunch it was a kind of provincial government. They were talking about food systems and funding food systems projects. And
that's right.
Yeah.
Because I told Phil, because most of the times, like I invite a lot of people and I forget who the hell I've invited. I don't even remember meeting half these people, right? Because I guess I just don't pay attention in life. But I did remember, so I said, no. And I said, she's now rock star status because they've got like a TV show and they were filmed and like CBC did something. I said, I haven't seen it yet, but I said, well, these people are a whole different world now. These are rock stars. They're way up there.
That is awesome. Is that like, so you have a TV show and everything?
Well, so there's a CBC TV documentary series, and they did a full episode that really features us very heavily. It's called Fresh Catch, and you can see it on CBC Gem. The show is called Absolutely Canadian, and then this is one of the episodes, and it's called Fresh Catch. So if you Google that, Absolutely Canadian Fresh Catch, you'll find it.
Can we? It streams, right? Like we don't have to, like, I'm not the techie of the two, as you can tell. So a lot of times I go and do this stuff and I can never find where the heck I'm supposed to be finding this stuff. Right. And then it says, well, you got to watch it on a time that's coming up. I think I don't want to do that. Like I want to watch it now.
I found it, Kenny.
So you'll send me the link.
I found it. No, I might. It depends on how much meaner you're going to be on me.
I'm done.
And if you are, then
no, I'm good. I've got my fill. I feel better now. It's all good. I got out of my system.
That's awesome. Do you mind me asking, so how did you wind up getting on CBC? Like, did you find them? They found you?
Yeah, the producer approached us, actually. It was about a year and a half before it was released. It was just released in August this year.
Yeah.
So about a year and a half ago, the producer reached out, called me and said, look, I've been exploring the idea of doing a documentary on like fishing on the BC coast, really community-based fishing. And what's that life like for people who are fishing families in coastal fishing communities? And he said, everywhere I turn, your name keeps coming up. So I figured I just have to call you. And he said, the last straw, I was out at the Gulf of Georgia Cannery, which is a historic site in Steveston. It's a museum built around the fishing industry. And he said, I walked in and there was a display and it said Skipper Otto. And he's like, okay, all right, universe, I got the message. So he called me up. So that was great. And then he started, painting the picture of what he wanted. He was like, I really want to get into fishing communities. I want to meet fishing families. I'd like to get out on a fish boat. I'd like to meet people from different backgrounds, like Indigenous communities or immigrant fishing communities. And I was like, oh yeah, you could meet this family. Oh yeah, I could take you here. I could show you this. And then he was like, oh my gosh, this is the whole, like you have so many connections. This is what to do. So for a year and a half, he kind of followed us around with his cameras, with drone cameras. and went out to meet many of our fishing families. It was quite a big project to actually get, like, because fishing, you don't know when it's going to happen, and you're at sea and there can be storms. Anyway, it was great. He got out there, and I think he's just done such a beautiful job of capturing what it means to, be a fishing family on this coast, and how, it's in your blood to be a harvester, a seafood harvester. So I think it's a beautifully filmed documentary. I think it tells the story really well. So people should check it out.
Oh, I'll put the link in the episode.
Absolutely. But now you understand the why. So Sonia and I sat beside each other during this thing. So we had to actually listen and participate in something else. But I did figure out that, because I like it too, because I'm from BC. I'm not from the coast. I'm from the interior. But like, we do have a rich heritage, forestry, mining, fishing, right? And I think it's just really BC for sure to talk about fishing on the West Coast. And whether it's the indigenous side, the immigrant side, whatever it is, there's just so much cool history on this coast, no different than the other coast, right? It's just different sets of peeps, but a whole cool world. So I told Phil, I said, I think it'd be really cool to have Ron, because I think there's a really cool story to be had. You've been doing this for a long time. So you've been involved in this, you know it all, as you can tell, you know a lot of people, etc. So I thought this would be a really, really cool podcast. Even if it wasn't around necessarily a product, which we can talk about because I know you have a product, it was really just the whole coolness of, like, it's so ingrained into the West Coast.
It is.
Thousands and thousands of years.
That, right? Like, it's like on the podcast, we've kind of made it our business to do a similar sort of thing, right? As both of us come from Canadian retail, we love it. We kind of live and breathe it. And we've kind of set about like finding, these brands that are all working, various stages of development so they can get to market and be something recognizable for Canadian consumers, right? So I love the story. Like, I think what you're doing is super cool. Anyway, so before we get too far, we always do this, but for the audience, we have Sonia Strobel on, and she I don't know, I don't know anything about you, so I know you're with Skipper Auto, so I don't know if you're
want me to do the introduction?
Boss or the head honcho.
Anyway, we have Sonia Strobel.
I'm going to put up now, and then she can introduce herself so I don't screw it up.
How about you fix this up for us? We just know I liked you and I had you on. I have no idea what you do with them either, and so I'm glad Phil tried to take a run at it. I just wanted you on, so I don't really care what you do. Tell me what you do.
Well, fantastic. I'll take the pressure off you, Phil, and I'll just introduce myself like that. That's great. Okay, well, my name's Sonia Strobel. As you said, I am the co-founder and CEO of Skipper Auto. It's a community-supported fishery. I founded it along with my husband, who's a commercial fisherman, about 15 years ago, the year that our first son was born. So I always think of it like I have a 15-year-old son and I have a 15-year-old company, and there's a lot of parallels there. But I'm also I'm on a lot of kind of advisory committees and executive committees for organizations related to food systems, seafood systems, kind of food security, these kinds of things. Community-based work is what I've done my whole life, right? Thinking about how to connect people and food. And I do quite a lot of speaking now, after having done this now for 15 years or so. I do a lot of speaking in Canada and internationally as well. Mentorship for other community-based organizations that are building food systems. And then of course I'm the mom. I'm a mom of two young men who are growing up in a fishing family. So I started Skipper Auto, 15 years ago, but it goes back farther than that. I married into a fishing family 20 odd years ago, and I didn't grow up fishing, but when I first became connected to this fishing family is when I just, I was surprised actually what a hard go it is to be a fishing family. Like, it's really risky.
Yeah.
You borrow a lot of money to get your boat up and running, get the gear going, to get your licenses, to fuel up, to pay your crew. You take tons of risk at the start of the season, and then you don't know how it's going to go. It's the last great wild protein on the planet, right?
Well, it's called fishing, not catching.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? You could be fishing and just a lot of sightseeing.
That's right. There, you don't know. There's no guarantee. It's not like farming where, like, I mean, not to say that farming.
And even farmers got its issues, same reason.
Yeah,
They can't control the weather. Who the hell knows?
You can't control it, but you kind of can see the plants are coming
Exactly.
out.
Where are the fish?
Yeah.
One year we have fish, next year we have no fish.
That's right. And
Where do the fish go?
Policy changes. Maybe there's going to be no access to a fishery for various reasons. There's global commodity markets.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a lot of salmon in Alaska this year, so the price drops for British Columbia harvesters. Has nothing to do with them, but they have no control over that.
Right.
This is super risky business, and typically when you're a fishing family, you take all that risk. You go and you see what you're going to catch, and about 90% of what we catch in Canada we export.
Yeah.
So Canadians aren't even seeing that fish. And at the same time, what Canadians are getting is about 80% imported fish.
Yeah. And probably a lot of the importers back our fish.
Well,
ship back the fish to process somewhere else, buy it back.
That's right. Some of it is.
No sense.
Absolutely. Makes no sense. And we have some of the cleanest water in the world, some of the most abundant, fish, some of the best managed fisheries, very conservatively managed for conservation. And Canadians can't access that. We're selling it all offshore. And this seemed like this enormous disconnect. To be totally clear, I grew up not really liking fish because I would I wasn't getting good quality fish.
You don't get good fish, and fish sucks.
Bad fish is really bad.
It's really bad.
Listen, I live in Ontario, so I know all about bad fish, all right? We get some river fish that are okay, but there's nothing.
Well, and it's all about that quality, like how it's handled, how quickly it gets to you, how quickly it gets into a flash frozen state and it preserves the catch day freshness. It's all about all those pieces. And the supply chain is not very transparent. You as a consumer or you as a retailer or you as a chef, you have very little knowledge about it's very difficult for you to know the story of that fish, where it was caught and how it was handled and when was it frozen and all those kinds of things. So it felt like this huge disconnect. And when I married into a fishing family, man, the first seafood I had, I was like, are you kidding me? This blows my mind. It's so delicious. Like I would eat this every day. And where everybody's missing out.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's good for the harvesters either. The fishing families have all this uncertainty and it's in their blood. I mean, fishing families are the most conservation minded. They're out there. Those who are doing this as a multi-generational thing, they want to see it continue in their families. They don't want to catch the last fish.
I was going to ask you, so is your hubby this is not this is a generational thing. His family's been fishing for
a couple generations. So
couple generations.
He started fishing when he was about 7. His dad started taking him for full summers on the boat. So the day school would let out, they'd head out on that gill netter up the BC coast and he would fish the whole summer. His birthday's in summer and sometimes they'd realize his birthday had passed because, they're just out.
Well, they're fishing.
They're fishing, right? And I mean, it taught him so many life skills. It taught him so much about himself and about relationship, about ecosystem, about community. So much of who he is came from fishing. And so then when our first son was born and I could hear, so my husband's dad's name is Otto, and that's why our company is called Skipper Otto.
Okay.
Because, what I learned about fishing was from Otto.
Yeah.
And Otto was talking about getting out of this fishing game, selling the boat. It's so risky. You don't make any money. And I was, had a baby and was really sad that this idea that my kids weren't going to grow up in this tradition. And I thought, God, there's got to be a better.
So
you didn't grow up fishing, but you were worried about your kids not.
I find that funny too. Because then you must, so you were into this family prior to the kids, but not a generation yourself. You talk 5-6 years. You were.
That's right.
But you were that sold
a little bit
this.
older. I don't know if he's going to listen to this podcast. So if you're trying to make favors here.
I don't know if
in case Otto, listens. Sonia
saying
great things to say about you.
But it's funny that but you weren't in it for any part of your life per se, and yet you end up being so emotionally tied to that. You're thinking, well, my kids have to have this.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. I think if you watch
weird,
that
right?
documentary, we were talking about that doc at the start of our conversation. I think if you watch that documentary, you get a sense of it, right? Because once you've been out on the fish boat and you've been in those fishing communities, there's nothing like it. That is community,
Right.
right. That is such raw, beautiful, fundamental community and place. And it's, they say this phrase, you get the salt water in your veins.
Yeah.
And I used to be like, okay, I don't really know what that means. But I get it. I get it. Once you are of that place and of those communities, and there is something so fulfilling about harvesting food to feed people, to nourish people. Like there's something so beautiful about that, and about respecting the ocean. There's this amazing thing that these salmon, we're a salmon fishing family, these salmon come back to the stream they were born within.
Think of that. 4 years later.
4 years later.
Who the hell, I couldn't find my house a day later.
Right.
4 years later, 1,000 miles from home.
Yeah.
Up a mountain stream.
Yeah. Within inches of where their eggie.
Seriously. That's insanity.
It's
and I think what people don't realize, it's crazy. And that's why I think people realize, like right now, we seem to be very down on farmers, down on fishermen or fisher people, and it's for whatever, water and whatever. And I don't think people really realize, like the true conservationists a lot of this planet are those people. I'm not talking cargo, and I'm not talking mass produced shit. I'm talking people who live off the land, live off the sea. Because I was lucky when I was with London, the family owned a lodge in Sonora, right?
Yeah.
So we would be able to go out with the fisher, with the guides and stuff. You want to see the best the people conserve, can't say the word. Those are the people.
Yeah.
They don't overfish. They don't want overfish. They throw back fish that you'd be thinking, why? Because, and they go through it. They're in tune to nature and the land and the water, and it's a big deal. Yeah. So I kind of know what you're saying. I mean, I'd love to do what you do in some ways, because I think these communities have to be so cool.
Yeah.
When they're so close to the earth and so close to the food source, like that's amazing.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And to supporting one another. They know what it's like to be out there if a storm comes up and something happens.
And you're worried about each other, competitors or not. Like it's a worry.
That's right.
That's
exactly.
Incredible.
It is really community. And you're absolutely right to draw that distinction between industrial scale extraction.
Right. That's different.
Different. And, I mean, a lot of people during the pandemic watched there was a documentary that came out on Netflix, and it was about, kind of all the evils of fishing. And the conclusion of that documentary was we shouldn't eat fish. And I beg to differ.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because I think you're right. There are huge problems in the massive global industrial seafood extraction business. There are massive problems with how that's being done. And yet, small scale community-based fisheries are completely different. The wild seafood that comes from those fisheries is the lowest carbon protein on the planet. It's the lowest carbon, lowest impact way to feed the people. Are going to feed the world's hungry. Then wild seafood that's harvested appropriately is critical for us to do that. So we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say we're only going to, Franken products that are produced in petri dishes. We can't say that. We need to think about, how do we do this sustainably? How do we do it well? How do we create good livings, good livelihoods where our people are paid living wages and they're treated with dignity? Everybody who touches that fish, how do we ensure that happens? And we can do that. And that's
so tell us how we do this.
Wait. Before we do that, can we, for the landlocked folks, can we just, because I think the distinction there between commercial, like a commercial, fishing and the sense of local, I think is, like, our audience might be tuned to this already, but because we make some of these distinctions in similar parallels, right? We get people who, there are lots of mass producers of chips, and then you've got your local kind of folks who do locally made small batches of chips.
It's just really good product, right?
But I think it'd be really helpful for you to kind of make that distinction, because then we're super clear. Because I feel like where you go after that, it'll be,
it's easier.
It'll hit home better, I think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. And I think you're right. People understand about artisanal food versus factory produced, mass produced food, right? And it goes for, as you said, whether you're talking about potato chips or bread or in this case, seafood, right? Yeah. So when we talk about community-based small scale fishing, we're talking about fishing families like mine. These are small boats, maybe 30-foot long boats. There's one or two people. This summer, my husband and our 15-year-old son were primarily the fishers on our boat. they go out for a couple of days at a time. They are, in our case, gill netting. There's, trolling. There's long lining. These are all small scale methods where each fish is hand picked out of the net or off of a hook. They're very, very targeted. Very little bycatch. So it's very common in a whole full opening on our boat, we won't have a single piece of bycatch. So we are only catching our targeted species.
Okay.
Right.
Our gear doesn't touch the bottom. It doesn't touch the ecosystem. It's heavily, heavily regulated. So you can only fish between certain hours, certain points on the map.
Right.
It's monitored. Halibut, for example, when you come into shore, every fish is tagged individually by a monitor. There are cameras on the boat that are rolling the entire time and being monitored. So to prove that you're doing what you say you're doing, very heavily regulated. So that fish that comes in is, as I say, hand picked out of a net or hand unhooked from a hook, and it goes straight into slush ice. So that's seawater and ice, super, super cold. Or it's flash frozen on board immediately. And so, flash freezing is incredible. I always say to people, like, freezing technology is not freezing technology. There's different things, right? We can freeze an embryo and make a baby out of it years later. We can freeze fish and have it indistinguishable from, the catch day. Like,
it's fresh.
It's fresh.
Okay.
It's way fresher, especially if you live in Ontario. It's way fresher than it sitting in an auction for a few days, it going to the distributor for a few days, it going on a plane for a few days, then it's in the grocery store for a few days, then it's getting old, so they freeze it, and then they thaw it and try to sell it again later. Like, that's a completely different thing. We're talking about a fish that's going to be flash frozen the day it's caught, or the next day when it comes to shore. And I mean, this is a beautiful product. All sushi is flash frozen. It has to be to sushi grade. So this is a beautiful, high quality product. And as I say, having grown up not eating that, and having grown up eating kind of mystery fish, I call it, and then having encountered this type of artisanal fish, it's a completely different thing.
I'm very familiar with your supply chain fish.
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
Yes.
You can get lots of it.
Get lots of that. Right, but it's a very different thing.
It's very different. I grew up I from a trail, right? So there's no ocean in trail.
Yeah.
I didn't mind salmon, but it wouldn't be a go-to fish. When I started liking salmon was the first salmon I caught. Right, because we flash froze it. We got it shipped. Within a couple of days, it was in the freezer or on the Barbie at home. And you're thinking, holy shit, man! Yeah, this doesn't taste fishy. This tastes like this is phenomenal.
Yeah, I always say.
And then you're thinking, whoa,
it's wrong. It's raw. It's decaying. If it tastes fishy, don't eat it.
Exactly. But what's most of our fish in the store? The reason it's already filleted and stuff is so you don't see the eyes, you don't see the scaling, you don't see it.
That's right.
Right, and that's why it's done. And whatever. But you're right. I mean, Phil. I mean, if you catch it off a boat, like, and you're having it like the next day, like it's unbelievable.
It's so clouded, right? Because the only time you wind up having fish of that quality is when you're on vacation or you're traveling. Right. And then your brain starts to wonder, it just tastes better because I'm on vacation, right? So you know what I mean? But
it's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it was probably taken out of the water that morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's
or
right.
it was flash frozen right away, and then maybe 2 days, but in essence, it's same day in essence because
but to your point,
done properly.
Most people would not. I actually don't. If I go to my local grocery store that I love a lot, or the butcher or someone like that, I wouldn't know which ones are which, right? Like,
and I don't blame them. It's very hard for them to know. This is not their fault. Seafood is particularly hard to have transparency in the supply chain, right? That's really hard to do seafood well in retail situations. It's really high risk, and really, like, I've looked at the stats, and most like grocery retail seafood is very difficult for it to be profitable, right? Because it spoils quickly. You have to have a lot of infrastructure to do it well, to keep it fresh, right? But grocery stores do it because the truth is, seafood shoppers are good shoppers. They are people who they tend to know their food. They like quality food. They like to cook at home. They know how to cook at home, and they're willing to try different things. So, grocery wants the seafood shopper in, and yet it's so difficult to do. And so I know we haven't talked a lot about how our model works, but I want to, add in this shout out to grocery retail and the role that they play in distribution. We have our members, we have customers all across 5 provinces from British Columbia through Ontario. And the way that we get the seafood to them is through community partners. And these are grocery retailers who act as a pickup hub. And so our members will say, I'd like to pick up at this location. And we pack their orders and we ship it there. And then those grocery partners keep it in their freezer and they hand it out to the customer when the customer comes. And this is a great community piece, because we are driving our shoppers to those grocery stores to come pick
How do you
up.
manage that?
They're also doing their shopping while they're there.
But then you can't have a lot of partners out there, right?
We have about 100 partners across Canada.
That's like 100 distributors in a sense, right? Because
yeah.
wow, and honestly, the complication of that. I mean, I know you probably just whatever. That's how that's because you're corralling cats and sending cats to 100 different homes, ideally close to that, but that's not.
Oh, we're sending it to 8,000 homes because we have 8,000 member homes across the country. And then those 100 locations are pickup locations. So maybe I should back it up and explain how that all works, because that sounds complicated when you hear it from that end.
No, it
sounded complicated both ends. It didn't matter. You didn't make it any easier.
Can we get back? Can we just close the loop? So the last bit on the commercial fishing, because I think that's also important to this conversation, right?
Yeah, this might be a 2-part podcast.
Yeah, because I think I'm starting to get it now. But like what you do versus a commercial fishery or like,
or you mean like an industrial fishery?
Industrial. Sorry.
Yeah. So to go back to the harvest and how it's harvested. Yeah, it's really very different. So like industrial scale extraction is a whole other.
Like it's extraction. I like how you even throw that, because that's what it is.
It is. It's extraction for profit, right? Because it's like, how much fish can we get out of this ocean as low cost and as quickly as possible? Yeah. How do we reduce costs in every way so that there's higher profit? And then along the supply chain, how do we have that be the most profitable? That's really how the business. I get it, but it doesn't jive with my values. That's for sure. It's not what I'm trying to create. So really, that seafood extraction is, the vessels are like factories. So, you have workers from around the world who often, can't even come ashore in the nearest country where they're working. And they're working as laborers on these vessels. There's well documented on the global supply chain and the global fisheries, well documented slavery on
I've
those.
I've seen documentaries on that. It's horrific.
It's horrific, people
getting treated like meat and killed and.
Yep.
Lots of.
We'll be right back. This episode is sponsored by Field Agent Canada. We want to talk to you about their program called the Buy and Try program. And it's a pretty cool program because it allows you to get category feedback. It allows you to get product feedback and then retention feedback. So what does that mean? So category feedback, you can see what field agent consumers are buying on shelf, and then when you encourage them, when you use Buy and Try, they purchase your product at a specified store, and then they tell you about the feedback in the in-store experience. Then they take it home, they try the product, and they give you feedback about the product experience itself. So does it taste great? Packaging. Do my kids love it? Those sort of things.
Not just about the product on this one. So they'll actually even tell me where they found it in a store, how they found it.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
and so
that's a little different than just the normal buy and try, right?
Yeah. Correct. Because now you're getting a shelf experience. If you're trying to figure out what sections you want to be in,
Did they find it displayed? Did they find it on shelf?
It was hard to find, or or I couldn't find it. I asked the store, and the store couldn't find it. Right. So it took me a long time to find it, those sort of things. Right.
Interesting.
So then you get feedback when they get home, they open it. Was it hard to open? Did the box rip? Now I've got a hard time keeping it. And then does it taste good? Does it taste awful? This stuff's disgusting. All of those things you get. And then the shopper will also tell you what their repurchase intention is. Like, now that I've tried it, would I buy it again? and then they actually share a repurchase for you when they actually buy it, again. So
in
that
real life, in real time.
Correct. But all of this
Cool.
allows you to, like a brand, to figure out, what is happening, so like a product like that you and I run, like OGB, we could put it through this, and then people could tell us, what we know already is that on our 300-gram bags, they hate the opening on the bag. We don't talk about that, but we hate the opening on the bags, and we're sure consumers do too. And one day we'll fix it, right? But they love the product enough that they'll keep buying it on shelf despite the bad bag opening, which we also know is true, right? But all of these things you could find out as you're building product or iterating on products. So that
we think those are true, and you may find out that nobody does care. It's only the only opening bugs me and you.
That's true.
And maybe the product's okay that way.
Yeah, that is.
Or maybe
true.
the product's too sweet, or maybe not sweet enough.
Yeah, and then it's one thing to ask all your friends, did you try it? Yes, I love it. And then, would you buy it again? Yes, I would. Except you don't see any purchases come back again.
Well, because they're not going to be that.
But this is a real consumer who will actually repurchase, and then when they do repurchase, you'll actually see them come back. So then now you've got a sense on possibly turns or continuity, right? Like things like that are kind of.
I like that, because I think the insights you can pull on that. I mean, then you can pull different placement insights, promotion insights, pricing insights, etc. It's no wonder that Field Agent is 12 years old and probably going to make it to 100, because that's a pretty cool. We'd
like to be clear. Jeff Doucette is not 12 years old.
Jeff Doucette might be 12 years old, but he is not 12 years old.
But Field Agent is 12 years old.
Happy birthday, Field Agent. That's pretty impressive. That's a good job on you and the team. Yeah. I mean, you guys offer a really cool service for brands out there. Even if you do act like 12, that's really got nothing to do with the commercial here.
And now back to the podcast.
Yep, exactly. Okay. And while extracting and really destroying our oceans, so taking, in some cases, the really important forage fish from the ocean that would be feeding all the way up the food chain. Sometimes people say, well, the answer is going to be farmed fish. We should be eating farmed fish because then but the thing is, we like to eat carnivorous fish, right? Salmon, you think about what we want to eat, tuna, these are carnivorous fish.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you're going to farm a carnivore, there's a reason we don't farm carnivores. We're not farming lions, because you have to make a lot of other animals to feed them. Right. It's the same with fish. If you don't feed other fish, they don't taste like fish. So I know there's a lot of innovation. People are trying to experiment with feeding them insects and chicken, poultry waste and things like that, but they don't come out tasting like fish. And most of the fish that is fed to farmed fish comes from some of the most egregious fisheries off the west coast of Africa. These are massive vessels that are stripping the protein from some of the most food insecure parts of the world.
We're sending it to us.
Fish and sending it to us because we want the privilege of being able to eat a so-called fresh salmon in February that comes from a farm. This is highly problematic. We don't need to be creating these incredibly convoluted systems when nature provides fish in abundance if we respect it and we harvest it responsibly.
It's hard though, because the narrative has been like, so when you say, you know what, my hubby and the 15-year-old go out gill netting, I tell you right now, emphatically what most people think, oh, I've seen that. Yeah. They go out and 50,000 fish come in and 6 are used. And it's just that's what people think. That is true when it's outside and it's these commercial fisheries, like massive industrial commercialized fisheries where they don't give a shit. They scrape everything.
That's right.
And if we use it, we use it. And if we don't, we dump it back.
Right.
And it's not back live. Like it's just, and I think people need to, this is why I was so excited when I saw the documentary because Phil, I've seen it live because I was privileged enough to see it live. And I saw it like on this much of a scale, like nothing, not what you see.
Yeah.
But when you see what people do and how much respect they have for what they're doing, it's phenomenal. Like it's an incredible industry. It's gotten a bad rep, some of it well-deserved, and probably because industrial fisheries just are animals. But it's
Yeah.
It's a neat industry, right? And it's
Yeah.
so BC.
And it's so important for people to understand that distinction. You know, when my husband and my son, when they're out fishing, you know, they put the net in the water. They can only have it in the water for 20 minutes because we're very regulated. You need to pull it in. It's a gill net, so that means it only ensnares the target fish. So the size of the mesh is the size of the gills of the fish that you're after, which is why there's no bycatch. A smaller fish swims straight through the net, and a bigger fish just bounces off and goes around it. So there's very little bycatch in that. So when you pull that net in, you might get, you know, 2 fish. And then the next time you might get 40 fish. But we're never getting more than, like, you know, that kind of time.
But you're 20 minutes in the water. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't think people realize there's a lot of water, not necessarily a lot of fish.
That's right.
So you're not necessarily you're doing a lot of fishing, but when the lines are out of the water, there is no fishing.
Correct.
You're not doing harmful things, right? Like scraping the bottom, like wrecking the landscape that, again,
I wish people really understood that. Now, if you still don't want to eat an animal byproduct, God bless you. No issues. Go do your thing. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
But remember, this plays into whether you buy from farmers too. Like this industrialized food processing is a problem in a lot of categories.
Yeah.
Specifically this one.
Yeah.
And the sounds with this one, it just makes everything bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because you get stuck with that labeling.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm all
we digressed.
I'm all dialed in now.
Good. You can have painted a picture. You can picture the size of the fishery we're talking about.
Yes.
You can picture, you know, individual small scale families. Like I say, watch that CBC doc, get some images in your mind there. Small scale, families feeding their communities and feeding their families, and then feeding Canadians with this sustainably, caught product that's beautiful.
So can we talk a little bit even on the community side? So where are you guys? And like when you say community, we all have to live in communities. Like he lives in Mississauga, I live in East Van. They're communities, different communities. I mean, I came from Trail, which is getting at least a little closer, but still like where are you?
My communities, like, I don't know what Mississauga is now. I think we're like 1.5 million people. So we're not exactly.
That's
like
a big community.
Right. And I think it would be maybe good for us to define what are we talking about?
Because I don't know. Like, what do you like? Are you talking 20 people town, 500, 10,000? Like, what is this?
Right. And I think of community, and actually, Phil, you were sort of alluding to this earlier. We're just talking about like what is local too, right? Like, what's local fish? What do you mean by that? If you live in Ontario, is BC fish your local fish? And I think of local, and I think of community as about relationship. Like, with whom do you have a meaningful personal relationship? That's your community, right? And so when you live in, Port Alberni or like Onsashot Nation territory, or you live in, Bella Bella or wherever, you're closely connected to people in your geography, right? And especially if a lot of you are fishing, you are a fishing community because you're down at the boats together, you see each other, you lend each other gear. So you have a meaningful personal connections through geography and through proximity, through the nature of the work that you do.
Right.
And so communities can be in big cities, they can be in small towns and small communities, but it's really about meaningful connection, which is what, in our case, a community supported fishery, the word community is in there. And if you live in Ontario, you live in Winnipeg, or live in Fort St. John, or wherever you live, you are part of a community, not because you're not a consumer, you're not just a customer, but you are engaged with these fishing families for a whole year. You promise these fishing families that I'm going to support you for whatever your catch is this year. And so I'm going to say, for example, I'm going to eat $500 worth of fish this year. Here's my $500. So you invest that into the community supported fishery. Then us as fishing families, we're about 40 fishing families now as a collective. We go fishing, and you get updates, you get emails a couple of times a week from the fishing grounds to say who's fishing where, what they're catching, stories, pictures, you get all of that information. And then anytime you want, you go onto the online store, you log in, and you'll see your $500 credit there. And you'll see, just like any online store, oh, look, there's halibut, and there's salmon, and there's tuna. And you pick and choose whatever you want. You put it in your cart, and the dollar value comes off of your pre-purchase credit. And then you choose your pickup locations. So we've got about 100 pickup locations across, from Vancouver to Ottawa, and Windsor to Fort St. John, if you think north-south. And so you choose your pickup location. Our team packs your orders, It's shipped to your pickup location and you go pick it up. But the real kicker, every piece of fish that you get has a label with the face of the person who caught it and their full bio. When it was caught, where, how long they've been fishing, how old their kids are, and how long their kids have been fishing. That is right on the piece of fish. So when you pull that out of your freezer to cook dinner tonight, we have a lot of our members who take the label to the dinner table and they say, okay, everybody, let's just thank Joel and Melissa for tonight's dinner. Thanks, guys. So that's that community piece, is that you are connected to your fishing families. You get to know them through the year. And, there's a beautiful demonstration of that at kind of the holidays. We do a Secret Santa project, and we ask our members, we assign them to one of the fishing families, and we ask them to write a letter and send photos to that particular harvester to say thank you. And the outpouring is incredible. We get hundreds of letters, like a Santa sack of letters for each fishing family, with the most beautiful personal stories about how their fish, what it means to their family, and pictures of them having it at grandpa's 90th birthday or at, these kinds of things. And so the harvesters are connected. They feel like, I remember one of our harvesters, and they can, fishermen can be these cranky old guys, right? And I remember one of the guys, he didn't want to go fishing this particular opening. It was a bit stormy. He said, well, I got to get something for the members. I got to get something for the members, because he's had letters from them to say how meaningful and how important that is. So this is why I say community is not just geography. It's about meaningful human connection and supporting one another.
Okay, so as usual, I'm never prepared for these, right? So I rarely do I even know who's on the show. So I didn't even know you did this. So I'm listening to you thinking, okay, I'm thinking, okay, you guys go fishing. You got your little community over there, you package this stuff, and you guys use a distributor, and you go to a store, you sell it to wherever you sell it. So I can join this community.
You can join. Absolutely. And Phil,
and I can have
I already joined.
See, Phil does this all the time. He fools around on doing stuff when we're supposed to be doing a podcast. And I can't do it because I can't do two things at once. I have to join after.
I want to come out first. And I feel like if I wouldn't get in the way, I kind of want to come out and fish now. Like I don't. I feel like I'm going to fall in, and someone's going to have to rescue me.
It's lovely.
On you, Phil. We'll tie you to the mast. You'll be okay.
No, I just think this is really so. Okay, now I'm going to go down the other way. This is so cool. How come there's only 8,000? There should be 1 million.
Well, we'll get there. But it's a good question, right? I always say that growth needs to be at the pace of trust, at the speed of trust, right? And so, sure, we could have, taken a lot of investor dollars and try to blow it up faster. But we need, all of our fishing families know us personally, and we know them personally, and we trust one another. And it takes time to build trusting relationships on both ends. So I need to know that every harvester family that joins shares our values and is fishing in the same way that we are. And it takes time to guarantee.
You got two of us. You had us for half an hour, and you got two new people.
Right.
It didn't take that long, so we trust you right away.
I'll tell you, in terms of getting members, we have incredibly high retention. So once people are members, they don't tend to leave, right? They're very happy. The product's great. The experience is great. And they tell their friends. Like our highest acquisition of new members is word of mouth, because once people they hear about it, they're on.
This is awesome.
Thanks.
But I think that what you're on as well is what, quite frankly, from the other side, is what we're all looking for too, right? Because literally, the landlocked, like I get some trout, I get some bass, right? Some lake fish, right? But the truth is, we don't have flash freezing or any of those sort of things. So anytime I fish it, the only time it tastes that good is if I'm kind of like cooking it as soon as I fish it, right? So we're camping. I've got a license. I can catch a couple of fish for the day, and then I'm cooking it right over the campfire immediately, right? Again, but you go, it tastes better because I'm camping. I'm not working, all of the sort of.
And then it's a treat. It's not how you're actually nourishing your body year round, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that way. That's our point. Is that you can nourish your body with this as a year-round thing. Multiple nights a week, you can be eating that beautiful fish, and it's so good for you, right? It's so good for the planet. It's such a win. Like, why wouldn't we?
Yeah, and I think that is part of, like, you know, the part about having kind of 100 points of distribution, I think, is amazing, right? Because
It's phenomenal.
it isn't clear, like, you know, to feed your family, you know, we've lots of friends, I mean, Asian background, so fish is part of the heritage, but even then you don't know. My wife is going to freak out. My wife grew up in the Philippines, and their family had fisheries there, or they had a and she always says that, right? But I have no idea, right? Because I'm born in Ontario. So when she says this is not fresh fish, right? Like this is, yeah, I'm like, sure, I don't, no idea, right? Like, because we don't know, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you're doing is really amazing. I think it's what we're all looking for, to be honest, right? Because we would like that. We just don't know what it tastes like, right? So we don't
Exactly.
know what it looks like. We don't know what it tastes like.
And we don't know where to get it. And that's the thing. We feel like we're disempowered to have that fish in our lives. But
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
This has been interesting. The shit that I've learned today. What the
Oh,
hell?
Lord.
And I'm signing up too right now. I just
Yeah.
can't be fast and as discreet as that one.
It's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
So
you
well,
got
great timing.
Fruitvale, so the trail people could go to Fruitvale and pick up.
So trail people can go to Fruitvale. Yeah, that's the thing. It's not hard to open up a new community partner location. So we've got people in like Estevan, Saskatchewan, and like small towns. All we need is a community partner store that's willing to act as that pickup hub, which they love because our customers are
Well, I
coming.
wonder why Ferrero's is not doing it in trail.
Who is that?
Danny.
Danny,
Come on,
James,
Danny.
and David. They should be doing it.
He's been on this podcast.
Where
He's-
did the Cooney Co-op and Nelson? How come they're not on this list?
Well, just connect us. That's all. Maybe they just don't know about us yet. But that's the thing. I mean, if you know folks and your listeners know folks who are running stores in their communities, and you know members in your community who would like to join, it's not hard to open up new membership. You know, when we first started out, my husband used to drive across the country with a truckload of fish, and it was just like he'd fish all summer, and then he would drive, and we would do member pickups like at farmers markets or things. You know, come on down on Saturday morning, get your fish. And it sort of organically happened that one of our members wasn't able to pick up in I think it was in Regina or somewhere like that, and knew somebody who had a little organic co-op grocery store, and she just put in brand new freezers, and she said, hey, just leave their order with us and they can come get it later. And then it was like, ding, this light bulb went off, like, oh my gosh, it's a win-win for everybody. We're driving shoppers into these stores. We're just piggybacking on existing freezer space, but it's super streamlined. Everything's super clearly labeled. It gets in, it gets out, doesn't take up space for long because we're very systematic. We're really efficient. And so then we realized, well, we could open up anywhere and we don't have to drive there, and it's way more obviously lower carbon and everything as well. So so we can ship to just about anywhere in Canada.
Wow.
I'm liking this.
I'm
signed up. Now what do I have to do?
Well, yeah, it's great timing actually, because the day of recording here, we're in September.
It says mid-September.
Yeah, it's going to open next week, literally.
Oh, so what do I do now?
So you just wait. You're going to, now if you've signed up to that list.
Yeah, it says thanks for signing up. Check your email.
Yeah. So basically what's going to happen is next week you're going to get an email, because we have seasonal sign up, right? Because the way that this works is that as members, you are committing to our fishing family.
So we prepay in essence so that your folks can go out and say, okay, at least I know.
Yes.
Like, there's $1 million coming in. Okay. I know what I can do. I know what I'm doing. Okay. Yeah. Which I kind of like too, right? That's okay. That's good.
Yeah. So our sign up opens in September there. We're going to open it up. You can put in your money, but you can start ordering fish right away. So let's say you've decided, like it's really low barrier to entry. If you're not sure you're going to like it, you can just buy $100 share your first time. And then you'll be able to go into the online store right away, pick and choose $100 worth of fish, choose which location you want it to go to. It'll get shipped to you. If you like it.
If I really like it, can I bump my number?
Yeah, you can just top up in $100 increments. You can be like, yeah, I'm going to add another $100. And then you can, your whole first year, we think of your whole first year as you figuring out like, oh yeah, how much am I going to eat? And, and then the next year, what happens is our members come back and they'll say, okay, you know what, last year I ate $500 worth of fish. I'm going to come in at 500. And we have a payment plan. So you can say, I'm going to commit to 500. Right. but it's going to come out in intervals through the year. So it just gives that commitment to our families. We know we can fish. We know we have a fair guaranteed market for our catch. And if, let's say, they close this area for fishing, but I'm going to fish this thing over here instead, well, it's no problem. Our members agree to eat with what we call eat with the ecosystem. Yeah. They're going to eat what's abundant and available. And if there's a year where sockeye salmon is low, that's okay. There's going to be Chinook and coho and pink. There's going to be other types.
There's other species we could go to. So let me ask you something. Sorry, Phil, just one while it's in my head because it's going to get asked by somebody or some. So am I in essence paying similar to what I would pay in retail? Like it's
you are. You're paying
fisher people.
Your
fisher people are making more. Than they would if
exactly.
they had to go through 17 layers of distribution too, right?
Absolutely. So you're paying comparable for a comparable quality product. So let's be clear, you can get cheap fish out there, but it's 100%. Not right. So if you're comparing apples to apples, you're comparing like this is BC fish, this is this year's fish, this is a good quality product. Yeah, you're paying comparable to what you'd pay elsewhere.
Okay.
The harvester is getting paid significantly more than they'd get anywhere else.
Yeah, you've cut like 17.
You cut a lot of layers out. And
That's
the layers in the middle aren't sometimes the nicest layers. So
that's right, exactly.
Nope. Sorry, guys, but that's the facts.
But you at least know where your dollars are going, right?
I really like this.
You're buying this fish, you know who's being paid, and you know that they're being paid a living wage, and that's what we're proud of. That all of our staff, we're a certified living wage employer, so everybody is paid what is a living wage, and that's
I like this.
It's an expensive place to live. So
I sat an hour with you. I didn't know any of this.
There you go.
Wow.
See?
I love. So the other side of this that I love is this cuts through the bullshit that you watch, you read about what's what, right? Because you really you eat with what, so you guys won't be able to offer anything you don't catch, right? And so me as a consumer, like all the way in Ontario, this is how I stay dialed into, you know what? There just isn't a lot of sockeye this year. I wouldn't know that. Like, there's no way that I would find that out on the internet or anything else unless I did some serious Googling, and then I wouldn't know if it was real or not. But now I'm getting it directly, indirectly through the catalog to be able to go, listen, it's not a thing this year, right? You just can't get it,
And we're talking about what are the effects of warming ocean on the stocks. Well, you don't have to guess and wonder if this article is right, but you're hearing it all through the fishing season. That warm blob in the Pacific, how's it affecting us? So you really are learning. And not only that, but we have found the community of our Skipper Auto members are incredibly powerful for advocating for policy reform. When policies are unjust, and there is something, that is affecting the ability of harvesters to, fish in their small scale sustainable ways, our members mobilize to activate change. And I'll give you a quick example. A few years ago, there was a fairly arbitrary change to the spot prawn fishery. So for 50 years, there's been a practice that you can you pop the heads off and freeze your spot prawns at sea in seawater. And it's been going on for 50 years. And fairly arbitrarily, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans said that's no longer allowed. We've just decided, and it was 2 months out of the fishing season. So harvesters have bought all their containers. They've got their markets lined up, and they said you can't do it anymore. And the domestic
problems are this much bigger instead of
right.
It's not just that you got to do the work.
Well, you've got to now sell your prawns into the live market.
Yeah.
So now you've lost your access to a direct market because
it's
you have
a whole
to sell
different world. So I'll give you an example. We had a friend who said, "Hey, we're going to drop some spot prawns off here. We just went fishing, blah, blah, blah." Drop them off at the house, right? And Amelia and I were home. Daniel was my son. So we go look at them. I had phone back. I said, "Fuck, man, there's their heads on these. What do you want to do with these things? They're alive."
Yeah.
They're moving.
And they're saying,
"One over there."
I said, "No, why didn't you just take care of it all?"
You have to.
I don't know what the hell to do with these stupid things.
And you can't have them die with their heads on because if they die with their head on,
I put them in the freezer to numb them or something because they were moving so much.
I didn't know
I didn't know what to do with these stupid things.
What happens when they die with the heads on?
They have an enzyme in the head that kind of
the meat
into the meat, and then the meat will become soft and it will deteriorate very quickly. So if you buy supposed live prawns at the market and they're not live anymore, they're kind of you don't want them. They're going to be mushy. Yeah. So when you catch them and they're live, you need to take their heads off when they're live, or you need to cook them whole from live.
We were scared, though.
Kenny said, put him in the freezer.
Amelia and I just looked at each other. So I phoned the person. I said, I can't do this. Yeah. She said, "Okay, just put him in the freezer they won't die, but I guess they slow.
They slow down. Yeah.
And it's just so you know, like like when I fish,
Yeah.
that's other people's work. They have to do the banging and the hooking. I ain't doing that shit. I just do the reeling.
Right. So you can see why, as harvesters, that's what we do. We take the
I
heads off,
know.
we finger pack them. Okay, so the department said you can't do this anymore. We put out a letter to our members to say, this has happened. It's not for conservation reasons. It's not for any reason. It's been an arbitrary decision. And so we started a petition. So you can imagine that's pretty powerful. Suddenly you've got letters flooding into MPs all over the country to say, this policy change is wrong. So it took us a year and a half, but we got it overturned for that first year where they just said, look, okay, go ahead and fish, but we're still planning to stop
do this.
So we bought ourselves that year so harvesters could still fish. We resumed the fight in the fall and we continued it. I was invited to speak at the House of Commons, because there was such a ruckus created by the public who cared. And like you said, Phil, the public wouldn't care if they didn't know. If they didn't know the fishing families are out there and they're being treated unjustly, but because they know them, they go bat for them. And so, there's so much great like petitions you can sign on the internet and all that kind of stuff, but it's exhausting. And you often don't feel like you're really getting anywhere. But when you join Skipper Auto and you're a member, you are an activist by kind of default, just by being part of this community and by knowing and caring about people. And then when an opportunity comes for you to write sign a petition, it has power, it has impact. And so we were able to completely reverse that decision about the banning of the tubbing of prawns at sea. That practice continues now, and that way of life is preserved. And that's what we do. We keep our eyes on those kind of policy situations, and we fight for the little guy.
So I'll tell you, I remember reading that in the news, but I remember I don't know how that means, right? But if I remember, it actually means something now, right? Because I think therein lies the community, like the serious community bit, right? Like we all talk about it, but that's where, it really.
Yeah, that's where the rubber hits the road. It's not just community in language, but it's community in action, right?
Well, you're actually part of it then, right? And you actually do have a better understanding. Now, if you don't disagree or you disagree with, then that's fine too. But at least you're based in a knowledge spot, and then an opinion is an opinion, right?
Exactly.
But I didn't realize that. I told you, like they hit the house. I thought I honestly was very uncomfortable, and I didn't understand why they just couldn't do themselves. This is stupid. I mean, the whole purpose of this was I wanted them fresh. I just didn't want to do any work.
That's right. It's an education piece too, right? Like you're saying, when you're part of something like a community-supported fishery, now you understand wwhy prawns need to be live. Now you understand why you don't want to buy them when they're looking.
I got told that. Now it's very difficult to buy prawns.
That's right.
Unless they're, if they're bagged and they're commercial, because what's flat for them, you get all that. Mm-hmm. But still, then you have a mushy prawn, thinking, oh, I know what the problem with this one was.
That's right. Exactly.
You had taught me something else about Kenny. Is in our podcast relationship, he talks and I do. And then I just realized that in our seafood relationship, it'll be he'll talk and because I'm not squeamish like that. I'm okay.
Oh,
but now I'm
Well, Phil, you got to come out. You got to come to Vancouver then in the spring when it's spot prawn season, and you can come out here and just head your own prawns. It'll be great.
And I'll just wait for you guys to finish that, and I'll enjoy the rewards.
This is our relationship, so I get it now, Sonia. I get it.
I see
you are like enlightening in so many ways now.
So when Phil does come out, if we were going to come visit you or wherever, where are you?
Yeah. Well, so we're based in Vancouver. So the False Creek Fisherman's Wharf, which is right next to Granville Island, is kind of our home base there. So it's great. We do member pickups in person at the False Creek Fisherman's Wharf.
I can pick up down there too then if I wanted to.
Exactly. That's right. Yep. So you can come pick up direct from us Thursday nights from 3 to 7 p.m. We're there every week. So even if you haven't had a chance to place an order, or you happen to be biking past on the seawall, you think, oh, it's Thursday, I'm going to pop in and see what fish they've got. You can just walk up like a storefront and pick up your fish.
Kenny's not biking, but I'm sure he'll stop by.
Yeah, convertible. That's like my
fair.
I haven't been paying attention, talking.
I see. I got piecing this together here.
Whatever.
All right, Phil, you bring your bike and
whatever. Whatever makes you happy. Do whatever you want to do. Okay, cool.
Oh, this is so awesome.
I think we could have talked for another 2 hours, but we got to cut
we're
this
kind
right.
of
We
out
got to.
of time. Okay, so season opens now, and then
Yeah, season opens now. Skipperauto.com.
Okay.
Anybody can go check it out.
Okay.
You can join, like I said, you can buy as small as a $100 trial, first starter membership. If you love it, you can top up in $100 increments for, and just start picking up your fish right away. So that's the best way for people to kind of learn more is go to skipperauto.com and kind of join the interested list or sign up.
will you come back on?
Sure.
Yeah, like in the spring, or if something else changes, in the industry or whatever. Like, we just had so much fun talking. I really feel like we could do this for another hour.
I feel like we did. I feel like we got nothing accomplished, and something. It's so stupid to say that we got
I learned
tons
so
done.
much.
But
Like,
I
learned
feel
so many
like there was
things.
a million things we could have talked about, or we should have talked about, and maybe we didn't. And I don't know if that's good or bad. And I'm
No, it's great. You guys, this has been tons of fun. I'm happy to do it again because I feel like you're right. We've scratched the surface, but we haven't gotten into like kind of all the policies and the ways that we, like policies that work and policies that don't.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten into kind of business model and reasons why we do make business choices.
Yeah.
How we use our values as a compass to make decisions and kind of some of the tools that we've
you're gonna
developed.
have to come back on.
We got tons of stuff we can talk about. So let's just plan to do that again. I love this. I made myself a coffee. We just sit down.
I love it. I love it.
Prep. We didn't even know what the hell you did. After we were talking to you at a table, still didn't know what you did.
Know what we were going to talk about, but hey,
geez,
you know what I'll do as the next step is I will figure out when your podcast comes out.
Right.
I'll send that date out, but we'll give our listeners some homework because they should probably go, even us, right? We need to go watch the documentary.
Yeah.
That'll help a lot. And then we'll bring you back on and then we can cover all the things because those are all critical things. Like, I don't think anyone in retail really understands, like, we're retail folks. So we understand cost structures. We understand those things, but we don't understand like live, like fish. Like, it just happens. Like what costs?
I think a lot of the grocers don't really get this either, Phil. I think a lot of grocers probably don't because they probably think it's just really complicated to deal with the fishermen or fisher people as opposed to just going to the distributor or whatever that is. Like, I think there's a greater,
well,
like, so you got two of us signed up within nothing. And we talk trust takes time. It took literally a couple minutes. And we're both thinking, well, shit, I didn't know you could join.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's great, and you can join. And then, I think a lot of retailers, like, the easy first thing is they can be community partners right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And we can be sending our members into their stores wherever they are. And more community partners means we can open up to more members. It's just an easy way for us to grow. So I think it's great.
I love it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Well,
that was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been lots of fun.
Yeah.
That was good.
Okay, so we'll talk to you soon. I'll be in touch. I'll send you when it's coming out, and then we'll work out the next date. So
sounds great. And you let me know when you get a chance to watch the doc because I think that's
I definitely will.
And now that we have the link,
I'll tonight to
sure. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sonia, thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. It's been great.
We'll chat later.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Okay.